So when you pick up a masterful mystery novel, um, you kind of automatically adopt this very specific mindset as a reader, right?
Hmm.
Like if the author spends half a paragraph describing a dusty, broken grandfather clock in the hallway, or mentions the main character check their watch at exactly, I don't know, 4:17 p.m.,
Hmm.
you don't just skim past it.
No, of course not. You bookmark it in your brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because a good author doesn't waste ink. But when we pick up ancient texts, specifically, say, the story of Noah's Ark in the book of Genesis,
Yeah.
we hit a highly specific calendar date about a boat resting on a mountain, and we hit fast forward in our brains.
Yeah, we totally,
We
yeah.
treat it like the terms and conditions on a software update, right?
Yeah,
Just scrolling
yeah.
past the details to get to the rainbow at the end.
Which is honestly a massive missed opportunity, and that's exactly what today's deep dive is about. We're going into a set of source notes titled David's Notes of the Ark, and we're really going to look at that exact mindset shift.
Yeah.
We're going to treat this ancient text not as a dry list of facts, but as an incredibly intricate puzzle. By digging into the hidden mathematical patterns of ancient Hebrew calendars, we'll actually uncover how one seemingly boring, skimmable date connects directly to one of the most famous events in human history.
And the fundamental premise driving these notes is, well, it's pretty provocative. The source essentially argues that the Old Testament is simply the New Testament revealed.
Right.
There's actually this great joke in the text about holding a highly publicized ceremony where you just tear out the blank page separating the Old and New Testaments just to see people's reaction.
Yeah, it's a great visual.
Because the whole idea is to stop viewing them as two disconnected eras or like separate collections of writings. Instead, we need to read it as one cohesive book, 66 individual books written across thousands of years, but constructed as a single narrative by a single overarching author.
And operating from that premise fundamentally changes your relationship with the text. I mean, if it is a single unified narrative, every minor detail in the early chapters is a deliberate structural support for the later chapters.
Right.
Nothing is there just for flavor.
So let's actually test that theory right now with the flood story. Most of us, even if you haven't opened a Bible in decades, you know the broad strokes.
Right.
The rain, the animals 2 by 2, the dove, the olive branch.
The basics.
Right, the basics. But the source asks this brilliant question that almost nobody thinks to ask, which is, when exactly did the flood end?
Yeah. And the text gives a remarkably precise, almost surgical answer to that question. In Genesis chapter 8, verse 4, we read this: "The ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of month, on the mountains of Ararat."
The 7th month, on
Yeah.
the 17th day. Now, if you're reading that casually, your eyes completely glaze over. You assume it's just, ancient record keeping. The boat landed, great, moving on. But if we apply our mystery novel rule that the author, or in this theological framework, the Holy Spirit, has a deliberate reason for every single pen stroke, we have to stop. I mean, why do we need to know the precise day a wooden boat bumped into a rock?
Well, to unlock that, we have to understand that ancient civilizations tracked time very differently than we do today. Like, this isn't a matter of looking at a modern wall calendar. The historical Jewish calendar system is actually multi-layered.
Okay.
So to understand the resting of the ark, we have to look at the first of these calendars, which is often referred to as the Genesis calendar or the civil calendar.
Okay, so how does that one work?
Well, it begins in the fall. The very first month is called Tishri, and the first day of Tishri is Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the new year. So the ancient cycle of time originally kicked off as the leaves were turning and the autumn harvest was coming in.
I can actually wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
Modern society operates on a bunch of different overlapping timelines too. Like we have the standard calendar year that kicks off January 1st. But if you're a student or a parent, your mental year really starts in late August or September.
Exactly.
Or, if you're in the corporate world, you have a fiscal year that might start in July. We constantly juggle these parallel timelines depending on what part of our life we're focusing on.
And that analogy maps perfectly onto the ancient world. This civil calendar, starting in the fall, is the ancient baseline. So when Genesis 8.4 states that the ark rested in the 7th month, it is specifically referring to the 7th month of this fall starting calendar.
So the boat lands in month number 7. But just knowing they track time starting in the autumn doesn't really explain why the date matters so much. Like, the source notes indicate that to see the actual pattern, we have to leave the story of the flood entirely and fast forward hundreds of years to the book of Exodus.
Yeah, this is where the layers of time get added. So in Exodus, the Israelites are preparing to leave Egypt. This is the moment God institutes the Passover, the lamb is sacrificed, the angel of death passes over, and the people are freed from slavery.
The birth of a nation, basically.
Exactly. And in that very moment, God introduces a massive structural shift in how they track their days.
He essentially gives them a new starting line.
He does. He declares that this specific month, the month they are freed, which is called Nisan, shall now be the first month of the year to them.
Wait, let me make sure I'm mapping this correctly. So they already have a calendar that starts in the fall.
Yes.
And now God tells them to start a completely new calendar in the spring based around this Passover event.
Yeah, but they don't abandon the old one. They layer the new one on top.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they maintain the civil Genesis calendar starting in the fall, but now they adopt a religious spiritual calendar starting in the spring with the month of Nisan. The entire purpose of this new calendar is religious observance. The 14th day of this new first month, Nisan, is Passover. It becomes the ultimate anchor point for their spiritual identity.
So if we have two different calendars running at the same time, offset by the seasons, what does that do to our mystery date back in Genesis? Let me try to count this out.
Go for it.
If the old civil calendar starts in the fall with Tishri as month number 1, you count forward through the winter, so months 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then spring arrives.
And that spring month, the 7th month of the old calendar, is Nisan.
Nisan is the 7th month. Wait, because the new Exodus calendar starts in the spring, Nisan is month number 1 for their religious year, but it's simultaneously month number 7 on the ancient calendar used during the flood.
Which completely cracks the code of Genesis 8.4. The verse says the ark rested in the 7th month. Based on the structure of the overlapping calendars, the ark rested in the month of Nisan.
And the text gives us the exact day, too, the 17th day of the 7th month.
Right. So translating that across calendars means the ark came to rest on the 17th of Nisan.
Okay, this is the part where the whole one-book premise kicks into high gear. We had this hyper-specific ancient date locked in the 17th of Nisan, and to see the payoff, the source notes take us all the way into the New Testament, specifically to the timeline of Jesus Christ.
Exactly. According to the New Testament narrative, Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of the Passover lamb. And the text is very clear about the timing of his crucifixion. He was crucified on the day of Passover.
And we just established that Passover has a permanent fixed date on that religious spring calendar. It always falls on the 14th of Nisan.
So the crucifixion occurs on the 14th of Nisan. Now, the central tenet of the Christian faith is that Jesus was in the grave for 3 days before the resurrection. If we add those 3 days to the date of the crucifixion,
You land on the 17th of Nisan.
the exact same date, the 17th day of the 7th month on the original Genesis calendar.
Stop. I mean, let that sink in for everyone listening right now. The day the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat, the literal day Noah and his family stepped out onto a cleansed earth for a brand new physical beginning, happened on the exact same date as the resurrection.
The source notes describe this so beautifully, it's an anniversary in advance.
An anniversary in advance. Wow.
Yeah. Noah's new beginning on planet Earth was perfectly synchronized thousands of years prior with humanity's new spiritual beginning in the resurrection of Christ. The dates are a perfect mirror.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you there because I have to push back on this just a bit because my brain immediately looks for the loophole here.
Sure.
We are talking about thousands of years of recorded human history here, and a calendar year only has 365 days. Statistically speaking, if you have enough major historical events, 2 of them are bound to share a date eventually, right?
Is this a fair point?
It's like being in a room with 50 people. The odds are incredibly high that 2 people share a birthday. So isn't it highly probable that this is just a really cool but mathematically meaningless coincidence?
I mean, a single overlap. Sure, you could absolutely attribute one shared date to statistical probability, but the source material addresses this skepticism head-on. The notes reveal that this is not an isolated incident. There are actually hundreds of these intricate, highly specific date alignments and numerical patterns running throughout the biblical text.
Hundreds.
Hundreds. The math repeats itself over and over, locking different eras of history together with impossible precision. It moves far past the realm of chance into intentional architectural design.
Man, if we accept that it's intentional, it completely wrecks how most of us approach ancient history and prophecy. Like, we usually think of predicting the future as just, saying words. But this implies the future is embedded into the actual fabric of time itself.
Exactly. And getting your head around that requires understanding a profound cultural difference highlighted in the notes, the clash between the Greek mind and the Hebrew mind.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Well, most of us in the modern Western world operate with a Greek mindset.
And the notes describe that Greek mind as viewing prophecy strictly as prediction and fulfillment, right? It's very linear.
Extremely linear. It's cause and effect. Point A to point B. In the Greek mindset, a prophet stands up and announces, in 50 years, a king will conquer this city. 50 years later, the city falls. The prediction was made, the prediction was fulfilled. You check the box, and the event is over.
Right, it's like a sniper shot, one target, one hit. But the Hebrew mind operates entirely differently.
Totally differently. To the Hebrew mind, prophecy is not merely prediction, it is a pattern. It's cyclical, it's fractal, really. The underlying theology is that God doesn't just verbally announce what will happen. He weaves a repeating rhythm into the events of history. The past acts as a template for the future. What has been is what will be, just on a grander scale.
That concept completely reframes the entire Old Testament. I mean, it means when you're reading about the flood, you aren't just reading a historical diary of some ancient weather event. You're reading a blueprint.
Yes, exactly.
It's a pattern of judgment, salvation, and a new beginning that is deliberately designed to repeat on a massive spiritual scale thousands of years later.
Which brings us to what might be the most profound quote in all of the source notes. The author writes, "The Jew's catechism is his calendar."
A catechism is usually a book, right? Like a manual of religious instructions and doctrines that you memorize.
Normally, yeah. You learn theology by memorizing a written list of questions and answers. But for the ancient Hebrews, their theology wasn't primarily taught through abstract study. It was taught through the physical rhythm of their calendar year.
Wow.
Think about the sensory experience of an ancient Israelite. They didn't just read about redemption. Every single spring, they physically selected a lamb, smelled the roasted meat, and tasted the bitter herbs. Every fall, they heard the blast of the shofar. Their planting, their harvesting, their festivals, their entire physical existence was orchestrated to act out these massive spiritual truths.
It was immersive learning. They were quite literally living inside the prophecy. Every time they celebrated Passover, they were physically rehearsing a pattern that pointed forward to a larger redemptive reality they hadn't even seen yet.
And the structure of their calendar wired their brains to expect the pattern. They weren't just waiting for a random prediction to come true out of nowhere. They were waiting for the next iteration of the cycle they lived every single year.
You know, if you're listening to this right now, I think this is where the ancient math becomes incredibly relevant to your everyday life. If we take this Hebrew focus on cyclical patterns and apply it to how we view our own time, it's a massive paradigm shift.
Oh, absolutely.
Because most of us live with that Greek mindset, right? We view our lives as a straight line rushing toward an endpoint. We just want to check off the boxes, get the job, find the partner, reach the milestone.
Right. And when our lives don't follow that straight, linear progression, we feel like we're failing. We feel immense anxiety because the prediction we made for our own life isn't coming true on our preferred timeline.
But if time is actually a pattern, a rhythm designed to teach us, that changes everything. You stop obsessing over the finish line and start paying attention to the season you are in. You start asking, what is the current cycle of my life preparing me for?
And adopting that pattern-based mindset naturally builds patience. It teaches you to look for the echoes in your own experiences. Like the difficult challenge you faced 5 years ago, the season where you felt completely flooded and overwhelmed might have actually been an anniversary in advance.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, it was building a structural resilience in you for a new beginning you're about to step into today.
It completely removes that frantic, linear anxiety.
Hmm.
Because, you know, if overlapping calendars and thousands of years of history can be perfectly orchestrated to tell a cohesive story, maybe we don't need to panic when our own lives feel like they're stuck in a holding pattern. We might just be in the 7th month, waiting for the 17th day.
And that is the ultimate value of treating these ancient texts with the respect of a deep dive. It moves the information from an intellectual parlor trick-like, a cool piece of biblical trivia, to a lived experience. It proves the profound structural integrity of the material, which rewards the kind of deep curiosity that our modern world often, frankly, discourages.
It really does. I mean, we started this journey with a seemingly random, incredibly skimmable verse in Genesis chapter 8. A verse about a boat resting on a mountain on the 17th day of the 7th month.
Yeah, and from there, we uncovered the dual nature of the ancient Jewish calendar. We looked at the civil Genesis calendar starting in the fall harvest, and the religious Exodus calendar born in the spring with the Passover.
We did the math, counting the months, to discover that the 7th month of the ancient calendar was the exact same time as the 1st month of the new calendar, the month of Nisan.
Right, and we watched as that ancient date of the flood's end aligned perfectly with the 17th of Nisan, the exact historical day of the resurrection. A flawless mirror reflecting Noah's physical new beginning with humanity's spiritual new beginning.
It's just an incredible realization that prophecy isn't just about saying words that come true later. It is a vast, sweeping, fractal pattern woven into the very calendar of the ancient world. It reminds us that in an age of constant information overload, where our default instinct is to skim for the summary and demand the bullet points, the most profound truths are almost always hidden in the details we rush past.
The author didn't waste a single drop of ink.
No, they didn't. Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over today. We just took a single, boring date about a boat bumping into a mountain and watched it unfold into a master blueprint for an event thousands of years later. So look at the information you consume. Look at the history you study, the texts you read, and even the daily repetitive patterns of your own life. What other boring details, numbers, or throwaway lines are actually the master keys to unlocking entirely new layers of reality? What massive, beautiful patterns are you completely missing right now simply because you are only looking for a linear prediction? Keep reading the mystery novel, and whatever you do, don't skip the details.
Thanks for joining us on this hour on the Archive Hour. Join us on our next hour as we bring you more adventures from the Bible.